Hello, hello, hello. How is everyone tonight? Hello, Sheila. Hi, Lois. Copper, how are you? Who else is here? Elta, hello, Elta in Arizona. So nice to see everyone. Cassandra, hello, hello, hello. I'm so glad. Connecticut. Wow. What's the temperature like? It's starting to warm up here in Virginia. We've had some weather in the 70s already. It seems like spring has sprung. I'm so glad to be with you again. What have you ladies been up to this week? Have you been busy? Have you been sewing? Maybe not. Maybe doing something else. Hello, Sandoval from Chicago. No, Valerie. Valerie from Chicago. All right. Melody, how are you? Awesome. I'm so glad everybody is here. This is going to be a fun time together this Friday. I love being here with you every week. I have some great tips for you today. We're going to talk some quilting tips. And for those of you who weren't here last week, we played a little game, and we're going to play that again today. Hi, Benita. Fabulous. I'm so glad you're here. Awesome. I just love this. This is fantastic. Who else is here? Let me check the comments. You know, when I'm looking down, I'm looking at the comments and reading what you ladies are saying. And forgive me, please, if I mispronounce your name or say your YouTube or Facebook name instead of your real name. Trying to read everything accurately. I appreciate your patience. Copper, you ready to play? I've changed it up a little bit. We are going to have a game, Jeopardy. If you remember Jeopardy, it's answers and you have to guess the question. And the topics this time is going to be your quilting fears. What do you fear in machine quilting? Let's see if we can address some of those fears. We're also going to talk about, oh, there's Nora. Hi, Nora. So glad you're here. Yay. And Christine Fowler. Christine. It's nice that you're here. Thank you for coming tonight. Awesome. We're going to talk about machine quilting tools, some quilting tips, and quilt blocks. So here we go. Are we ready? How many of you remember when you were in grade school, something one of your teachers said? One of my teachers, it was my kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Dax. She always said, boys and girls, put on your thinking caps. All right, so we're going to play Jeopardy. Oh, there goes Wilda. Hello, Wilda. Let me move this up here. Scared of everything machine quilting? Don't be afraid. So, who is going to give the first suggestion? Should we start with something easy first? Let's try a machine quilting tool for 100 just to give us a running start. It's curved and metal and holds the quilt together. Who knows the answer to that? Curved and metal and holds the quilt together. I think Copper has it. Anyone else? All right, here's the answer. What are basting pins? Correct, correct, correct. Awesome. All right. What is pins? Nora, everyone has that one. That was easy, right? All right, so let's try another one. Give me a suggestion. And a topic, and then how many points? 100, 200, 300, or 400? 400 being the most difficult. I'm checking the comments to see. Copper says fears for 200. What do you fear when it comes to needles for free motion or machine quilting? What is your concern or worry? What are you concerned or worried about when it comes to needles for free motion quilting or machine quilting? What is the correct size? Breaking a needle. What is the correct size and how to use it? Breaking a needle, getting sticky stuff on the needle when quilting applique. Wilda, knowing the proper needle for a specific project. Breaking. Free motion is not scary, Nora. I want to take the fear out of free motion quilting. Do you know what? You ladies are right. What is choosing the right needle for task? When we choose the right needle, we have success. So if you watch the previous lives, because they're recorded and they are on the YouTube channel, we talked a lot about how to learn about needles. Correct, Lois. That was right. That's another one. What is the correct size for the thread we're using? Okay. Can I get another question or answer? Quilting tips, or how about quilt blocks? That should be a fun one. And you ladies have to give me a little bit of grace because I'm not used to creating a Jeopardy board with the right answer questions. So this is just for fun, right? Okay, Nora brought a ballpoint sharp flat shank. Okay, what's the correct size? Okay. Anyone want to choose a topic? Quilt blocks, maybe? Anyone? Thank you, Copper. Wilda, quilt blocks for 400. Whoa, she's going for big points. Big points. All right, here we go. Sands of Time. What is the quilt block for Sands of Time? Yvonne, yes, awesome. Quilt blocks for 400. Sands of Time. You ladies are just too smart. Too smart. Sands of Time. Nora, Copper has the correct answer. Hourglass. Never heard of it. What is hourglass? Yes, Lois, you got it. Awesome. I like this category. Let's try one more, and then we're going to move on to today's topic. Let's do another quilt blocks. What do you think? Yay for copper. All right. Who wants to pick one from quilt blocks? Well, Copper, you had a chance already. Somebody else. How about Christine? Or Nora? Or Lois? Pick one for quilt blocks. Copper, you're just so fast and smart. Quilt blocks. All right. Is everyone okay with going with quilt blocks for 200? I don't see anyone else posting. Oh, Christine Fowler. Great. Quilt blocks for 300. Here we go. New York State of Mind. That's my hometown. New York State of Mind. There's even a copper. Ladies, I did not talk about this game beforehand with copper. And the answer is correct. New York Beauty. Awesome, Sheila. Copper. Spacebar. Yeah. What is New York Beauty? Awesome. Born and raised in New York. Me too. Copper. Awesome. What is New York Beauty? You got it, Lois. Yay. You ladies are just too smart for me. I'm going to try and have it a little bit harder. We'll go back to this toward the end. Excuse me. Let me get something to drink. All right. So here we are. We're going to talk about this quilt. This quilt is Taffy Candy. Taffy Candy is a quilt I designed and made when I was an Island Boutique ambassador a few years ago. I can't believe it was 2018 already. And I quilted it very simply. The last couple of live sessions, you've seen some quilts with some very intricate quilting. And I wanted to take it down a notch. Thank you. Oh, Nora, you're from Philly. Awesome. Let's see. Taffy Candy, like the name. Thank you, Copper. Awesome. So we're going to look at and break down, just like every other week, break down this quilt. How was it quilted? It's a modern quilt. I wanted something very simple to quilt it, to use a quilt pattern. I wanted to use the movement of the light to dark for the quilting. I wanted that movement to be accented with the quilting. And so there's multiple techniques in this quilt. Who knows what is the first thing I did before quilting this quilt? What do we always talk about? We always talk about quilt stabilization. Is that right? Do you remember that? And how that was done with this one, I stitched in the ditch along the perimeter of the block and also on the X of the block. Along the edge of the block and also the X of each block. Stitch in a ditch, anchors. That's right. That is very good. What thread would you use to stitch in the ditch to stabilize a quilt? Wilda, pray. You're so funny. Oh, Wilda, the comedian in the group. What thread size would you use to stabilize a quilt? It's not the main quilt, but what thread size and weight or weight? Who can guess what that is? Stitch in the ditch. And also, would you use gray thread? In this instance, I did not. Because it's a very two-color strong quilt, I used black thread. Okay, 40 weight Sheila would be too heavy for stitch in the ditch. I recommend for stitch in the ditch because you want that thread to just melt right into that seam. Melt, M-E-L-T, melt in the seam. 60 weight. 60 weight thread with a 70-10 needle. Higher number than 50. Yes, 60 weight. I like to use Bottom Line by Superior. Now, if the background was, say, white, I would not use a black thread, right? I would use a white thread. But when it's not such a stark contrast between the fabric colors, I usually choose a creamish gray color. I forget the number. I'll have to get that next time. There is one that I use that works well with everything. You're so scared. Don't be afraid. It's one step at a time, Nora. One step at a time. Don't be afraid. So, okay, stabilization of the quilt was the first thing. 60 weight thread, 70-10 needle, and it was in the seams, not all of them, just the perimeter of the block and the X part of the block. And that is because there are some biased seams. Whenever I have a quilt with biased seams, I want those seams not to shift. And by stitching in the ditch, I helped secure them before I did the main quilting. Does everybody understand that so far? Yes, Nora, you'll do fine. Thank you, Copper. You're cheerleading everybody on. That's awesome. And remember, we don't start with something big. We start with something small in our quilting process, right? And we practice first. That's why I like to use orphan blocks or a quilt panel to practice. Good point about the bias seams. Yep, exactly. Whenever I have a quilt with bias seams, I want to stabilize it before I do the main quilting. Okay, so let's talk about thread. Let's talk about thread. Close this down a little bit. As you can see from the photo, there are 4 different red spools of thread. They have a different weight and a different red color. And one that I decided to use is the heavier weight thread. Because my quilting was going to be loose and not very tight, I wanted a heavier weight thread so that the stitching would stand out. But I didn't want the thread to overpower the quilt because red could be very bright, right? So I chose a 30 weight matte finish thread, and it's variegated. Not variegated with multiple colors, but variegated with black and red. It was perfect for this. The background is not completely black. It's a charcoal with gray accents. So this variegated 30 weight thread was going to be perfect for quilting this project because it would do this melding and blending in with the background between the red and the black on the quilt, because the thread is variegated with red and black. So I wanted the red thread to stand out in some parts of the quilt, but I wanted it to disappear in other parts. Yes, Aurifil is a matte finish. This one is by Superior Threads. Oh, let's see, move this up here. There we go. Oh, hi, Maureen. Don't worry about being late. I'm just glad you're here. Everyone, welcome, Maureen, my dear friend. So let's go to the scene with the thread. Oh, we don't want low battery. All right, here we go. So this is the variegated thread. It is, you can notice that it is thicker than this thread. This one is 60 weight, bottom line. And this is the variegated black and red thread with the matte finish. Do you notice that it's a little bit thicker, right? Thicker than the 60 weight. This is 60 and this is 30. This is the 60 weight thread here. And this is the matte finish with the variegated thread. Thank you everyone for saying hello to Maureen. Awesome. Yay. I love it. Everyone is being so friendly. Fantastic. What are your thoughts about the selection of thread? Have you ever used 30 weight thread on a quilt? The matte finish with this thicker thread allows it to stand out without being overpowering. It's that matte finish. Does 30 weight thread change the tension? It can, depending upon if you are using a lighter thread in the bobbin, which is what I did. So you always double check your tension. You only use 50 weight? Well, I encourage everyone, if that's what you love, just one weight of thread, that's fantastic. And as you start to, because I use primarily 40 weight thread. Once in a while, when I want to create a different look, I will move into 60 weight or to 30 weight, but most often I'm using 40 weight. And it also depends on how dense the quilting is with the thread. So I wouldn't do very dense quilting with 30 weight thread. It would just overpower the quilt. But I want you to just notice the difference between the threads and how this variegated 30 weight it's a subtle difference, but it blends very nicely with the quilt. And why I use certain threads for certain techniques. Okay. Good. I'm also glad too. A lot of ladies love the Aurifil 50 weight thread. It's a common thread. It's a middle of the road. It's not too thin like 60, but it's not too heavy or thick like 40 weight thread. You were getting breakage. Well, that all depends. You know, Superior threads, they're pretty good. Let me show you. Let me see if I can show this to you. If I can get this to focus in. It tells you, this is Poly Quilter. Let me see if I can get that in good. All right. It's called Poly Quilter, and it tells you that it is for a home machine, top stitch needle 116, and it tells you even the long arm needle that you should use. There are a number of factors that can cause the thread breakage. If you find that the tension is too high, you lower that, but if it's still breaking, then it could be the needle, or it could be some other factor. If the thread could be dry and needs to have some moisture applied to it. So that's the only thing I can suggest, that if it continues to break, especially all things being equal, perhaps the thread needs some lubrication. Okay. That would be a great class challenge. Yes, Sheila, that is a good challenge, to try 4 different thread weights and see what the result is. I like that idea. Yes, that's why in the last few lives, I've been telling you about Superior Threads. They have so much information, not only on their website, but every spool. I think even the bottom line has similar information. Yep, there we go. Let's see, there we go. Bottom line, 60 weight. The yardage, they even give you the number for the color, bright red. I love Superior Threads. They want us to be successful in our quilt projects. Okay, we're going to move on to the techniques used to quilt. So the straight lines that you see in the quilt were done with a walking foot. When we quilt our projects, we don't have to stick with one technique. We can combine techniques. So the outer edge of the quilt was all done with a walking foot with the 30 weight thread. Now, of course, I could have used a ruler, but instead I used the walking foot. Wow, so much to learn, says Maureen. Yes, and it's just little by little. I hope no one is feeling overwhelmed. Often when I'm in these kind of situations where I'm learning something, I listen, I take in a little bit at a time, and then because this is recorded, I might go back and listen to it again and see what I missed. Listening to something 2 or 3 times, which is what I have to do, helps me to grasp things that I missed the first time around. Wow, that's an awesome question, Copper. Someone asked, I think last week or the week before, if I mark my quilts. I used blue painter's tape to mark the first section of those lines, because there's lines on either side creating a border and boundary for the ruler quilting I'm going to show you in a few minutes. But those 2 lines, those first 2 lines that border the ruler quilting, I used blue painter's tape. I took out my big table, I put the quilt on it, and I took a long strip of painter's tape, a long strip with a ruler, and taped down that painter's tape. And once the painter's tape is down, my foot glide it next to that painter's tape to stitch the first line for each segment. Then after that, I just use the edge of the foot. The other thing with walking foot quilting, we tend to want to just go through it very fast. And it's a slower process. It's slow and steady wins the race. Don't go too fast. And sometimes you can make sure that you're staying straight by marking 2 long lines with the painter's tape. You just use your cutting ruler to measure the distance. Then you put the painter's tape next to the ruler so that you have that maybe 5 inches of space in between each line of painter's tape. And so you'll know if you're going off, but you should stay straight if you're using the edge of the foot. Copper has so many good questions. That is your choice. What stitch length? I tend to use, in this situation, I think it was a 3.0. I don't like to use anything too small with a walking foot. I use usually a larger stitch length, a 3 millimeter stitch length. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. So now you can see on the bottom of the frame and at the very top, those straight lines. And remember the last couple of weeks when we talk about quilting, we talk about stabilization of the quilt. Then we talk about borders and boundaries for the designs we're going to put inside the quilt. So the straight lines with the walking foot, after the quilt was stabilized with Stitch in the Ditch, created the boundary, the space coming down diagonally through the blocks, the space for the Serpentine ruler quilting. Okay. In the photo, you'll see one of my favorite Serpentine rulers. This one in the photo happens to be one that I used when I was a Juki educator. It's also available through Quilter's Rule. And all the tools and things that I mentioned in this live session on YouTube, they're in the description box below. So if you want to look at the thread or the rulers or anything, just go in the description box below. How long is the Serpentine ruler? Good question. I'd have to go and measure it, but I'm not sure how long it is. This is the same ruler that you can get. It's available at Quilter's Rule. And then here's the other one that's my favorite. This is one by Westalee Design. And this one is a little bit different in that it has some etched markings on it. And I like this ruler for that reason. This one has fewer lines. I prefer rulers that have etched lines on it to help me in my designing. The more lines that it has on the ruler itself, the more you can use it to stitch a design without marking your quilt. But I use both of these rulers. This Serpentine side and then this Serpentine side. You prefer lines too? Great. They really help. Okay. Let me go back to this one here. So you can see in this example how those serpentine lines were coming down the quilt in between the walking foot. And all of it was this diagonal quilting pattern. And guess what? The serpentine lines were all random. They're overlapping and they're random. So that gives us freedom. We didn't have to make sure that they were perfectly lined up. It's almost like waves going through it. And waves aren't necessarily all going to be exactly the same. They can overlap. And so that's the beauty of this design. So this is the ruler I mentioned, the So Steady Westalee design ruler, the Serpentine. You should have noticed a couple of different thumbnails underneath my photo down here. Those are for videos on the YouTube channel. If you want to see how to use this ruler, you can visit the playlist and look for the Serpentine video and this one where serpentine lines were stitched. Another way you can use the serpentine ruler and then fill it with designs. So this is the design with the serpentine ruler before it's filled in. Then afterwards, you can fill in any space that you want. The whole idea is just to have fun and play. Here is, let's see, did I do this one? Here it is. Yep. You see how the wishbone design is added into this design? It's a very different technique, but it's an option to fill in the space or to leave it without anything in. Which do you prefer? I think I like both. This one is definitely appealing where there's no wishbone design. But then you can add the wishbone design in just one or two places, maybe not all of them. What's the name of the lined ruler? Okay, it is in the description box below. I think I mentioned it. It's from Westalee Design. It's serpentine, and they have several serpentine rulers, and this one is the C12-2. Yeah, I like both too. Yeah. Okay, so let me show you this quick little video to give you an example. Another way that you can use the serpentine ruler. We can do some echoes of serpentine shape. Thank you, Yvonne. You like the wishbone design. Thank you. It does add lots of character. You see how just a little bit of that wishbone was added into this quilt panel? And this is just a small example, again, of what you could potentially do. You can echo that curvy shape, and you can echo it with 1/4 inch echoes, 1/2 inch echoes. It's really up to you. So for instance, those straight lines that I put in taffy candy with the walking foot, what if instead I used the serpentine ruler and did these curvy lines all one right after the other? The echoing is very, very nice and fun. All right, Sheila, I'm going to hold you to it. I hope you do practice. I want to see some of that. If any of you ladies practice any of these designs or techniques, please share it with us. We'd love to see it. You can post it on my Facebook page, Living Water Quilter, underneath the video, in the comments. Just post it in your comments so everyone can see your progress and we can encourage one another. Okay, Yvonne says she just finished A Drunkard's Path using scraps. The serpentine lines and echoes will make it pop. Yes, that's a great idea. Nancy, I didn't know you were here too. I'm so glad you came. Love it. Good question, Nora. Remember I talked about the ruler having these lines? The lines on this ruler, let me go back here. The lines on the ruler, matter of fact, I think I'm going to go to the overhead camera instead where the thread is so you can see it better. See those lines? The lines on this ruler, whoops, drop my pointer. These help us make the echoes consistent. From the edge of the ruler, it's a 1/4 inch distance we stitch. Once I put the ruler, this first line of dashed lines on top of the previous stitched lines, that means I'm going to stitch a 1/2 inch away. The next line would be 3/4 of an inch, and that would give me a 3/4 inch echo. Carol says the serpentine quilting is so great on the triangle fabric design. Thank you. I never thought, mixing curves with the angles. And that's one of the techniques, one of my secret techniques. Not so secret anymore, right? It's not really a secret. It's something that I do. If my quilt has a lot of sharp angles, I like to quilt something with curves, and vice versa. Awesome. Wonderful, ladies. So I hope that you are getting some ideas about how to quilt your projects. You can combine techniques like the walking foot. You can use the serpentine ruler, and you can stitch close together or far apart. There are a lot of ways we can quilt our projects. But what's the first thing we do? The first thing we do is we stabilize the quilt, right? Sometimes that stabilization can happen with the quilt design, or it can be completely separate, like in the case of Taffy Candy. Taffy Candy was stabilized with Stitch in the Ditch. Stitch in the Ditch to stabilize Taffy Candy. Then the main quilting happened with walking foot quilting along the edge to create a border and boundary for the curvy serpentine quilting along the quilt blocks. The serpentine quilting is down the quilt blocks on a diagonal. Awesome. I'm so glad, ladies, you're sharing your ideas with one another, helping each other. And Sheila had a great idea about maybe doing a project where we quilt with multiple threads or techniques. I like that idea. Sometimes that Stitch in the Ditch can do that. It just depends. I find that if I do it in such a way that, like with the 60 weight thread, and it really gets buried into that seam, it may not interfere. And then sometimes I don't stabilize the entire quilt in areas where I don't want it to have that quilt as you go look. It all depends on what result you want in the end. But that's a good observation. Very good observation. Next week, we're going to talk about another quilt. I just shouldn't say another quilt. It's a second version of Taffy Candy. I made 2 of these quilts, one in another colorway. I used probably a cotton batting on this one because you can notice it's very flat. There's not a lot of texture, surface texture in it. It's very flat. But Taffy Candy in this different colorway was quilted with 2 layers of batting. Actually, 3 layers. I'm going to show it to you now. And it's also Taffy Candy, but it's with different colors and different quilting technique. And this is another reason why I suggest that you try different techniques on smaller projects. Here we go. What do you ladies think? Same quilt pattern, Taffy Candy, but completely different colors and completely different quilting design. Oh, let's not wait till next week. Okay. We're going on almost an hour. I don't want to keep you ladies too long. So this is Taffy Candy, and it has decorative stitching, 2 different types. It has a trapunto-like technique. So there's 2 layers of batting behind the quilt blocks, but not in the background. Yes, Sheila, time does fly. I know you have a lot of questions about this. Oh, thank you, Carol. Yes, some area has some red thread. If you can notice that along the middle of the quilt, I incorporated some red thread. That's another technique. So 2 types of decorative stitching, multiple batting layers, multiple thread colors. It doesn't seem like an hour. I know it did go by fast. It's been 50 minutes. Oh yeah, the swirl looks a little bit like a peacock. So next week, come back because we're going to break down this quilt. I'm going to show you some detailed pictures of the different things that I did with this quilt and techniques that I tried. And I did promise Sheila that I would talk about one of them this week. And it is using a decorative stitch in the binding. But I'm not going to talk about it, Sheila. I'm going to save it for next week. Sorry. We are going to look at some close-up photos next week of the decorative stitching in the binding, the decorative stitching on the quilt blocks. Thank you, Bonita. I'm glad you like it. Thank you. Billionaire style quilting. You know what it is, ladies? It's practice. It's all practice. We are always learning. I'm a student forever. Why do we quilt? We enjoy it. We like to make quilts and give them as gifts. We like to make quilts and put them on the wall, but we also enjoy the art of quilting. Sheila's excited. Yay. No, multiple layers are not used throughout the quilt. Nope. I know, now I piqued your interest. You want to know how this was all done. But I'm going to save it. Nora. Practicing for 20 years in a row. That's true. Because we'll never be perfect, right? So we're always learning something new, some new tool, some new technique. I'm glad you look forward to them. My mom said it's 20 years experience or 1 year's experience 20 times over. I like that. So this is what we'll be looking at next week. Now remember, stuff that we had tonight, if you want to look at the videos on how to stitch with the serpentine ruler, there's videos for that. There's videos for the wishbone design. And the taffy candy pattern, I forgot to mention to you, the taffy candy pattern, if you're looking for a baby quilt, is inside Quilter's Planner. Oops, there we go. Quilter's Planner for this year, 2021. It's one of the patterns included in the book. Let's see if I can find it here. It's in the project section. Shoot. Okay. There we go. And it is the first, I believe, the first pattern. Let's see. Patterns. Here we go. The second one listed inside the, and it comes with pictures. Okay. And that's the Quilter's Planner. (2021). All right, so we are going to end with a couple of Jeopardy questions, because now that I've shared all this information and your brain hasn't exploded yet, I think we need to go back and at least do 2 more questions. All right, and then we'll say goodbye till next week. I hope you're here next week too. Oh, thanks, Maureen. Aren't we multitaskers, right? We always like to listen and do things at the same time. I hope to see everyone here who can attend. Thank you, Cassandra. I'm just reading some of the older comments. Optical illusion effect. You like that? You're welcome, Carol. You're welcome, Christine. All right, who has a question? Sheila says, quilt tips for 200. All right. What is a stitch length technique? How do I recommend you get good stitch length when you're stitching free motion quilting? Where do you get the Quilter's Planner? You can go to thequiltersplanner.com. Stephanie Palmer is the quilt designer behind it. I've been able to and very thankful to be a part of her Quilter's Planner for the last 3 years. She also has a Facebook page, but you go to thequiltersplanner.com. Okay, so stitch length technique. Should I give the answer? I don't see anyone. Where do you get the, okay, that's it. Anyone else? All right. What is a medium machine speed and drive it like a car? Have you taken a class with me? A free motion quilting class or a ruler quilting class? That's what I recommend. When you don't have stitch regulation, set your machine speed on medium and use the machine pedal like you're driving your car. You want to control the speed of the machine with your foot pedal. To slow down, to speed up. When we first learn how to drive, we're jerking, right? When we first learned, we weren't able to drive smoothly. Sometimes we went too fast or too slow. We didn't know how to control the speed of the car. But over time, at least for some of us, right? Or all of us, we all drive. If we all drive, you know what I'm talking about. Think about that the same way for free motion or machine quilting. Control the speed with your foot pedal. And by putting it on a medium speed, you never go too fast. Okay. Slower pace, that's true too, Cassandra. It doesn't help us to go too fast. I always say the speed for your free motion or machine quilting should be only as fast as you are able to control the stitching. And that means the stitching pattern, the stitching length. Great. All right, one more question to close us out for tonight. One more. Okay, I'm going to choose it, a quilt block. I'm going to do, let's see, quilt block for 200. Intoxicated. Someone mentioned this block tonight already. Who knows the answer for this one? I had such a fun time with you ladies. Thank you so much for coming and spending time with me. All right, Sheila, Drunkard's Path. Don't drink copper. Don't drink and drive my quilting machine. Drunkard Sailor. All right, you ladies make me laugh every single week. You guys are so much fun. You're the highlight. Yes, Nora, Drunkard's Path. Yeah. This is really, really fun. I enjoy this. This is great. All right, I have to do this one. I have to do one more. I know I said it was the last one, but one more. What quilt block is a Canadian bird migration? You bring out the best in us. Oh, I can't fool you. Flying geese, Nora. Yes, yes. All right. Awesome. Yeah, all right. Fabulous. Yep. Yolanda, hello. Awesome. Dolores, hi. I didn't know you were here. Fabulous. Flying geese. Cassandra, awesome. Yes, he finally got one, Nora. Awesome. All right. That is it for tonight. I'm so glad that we had this time together. I enjoy our time. I hope to see you ladies next week if you can come. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a wonderful weekend. Get some sewing done. I love, love, love being with you. I hope you like my glasses. Yay. You're welcome, Lois. You're very welcome. I'm so, so glad we could spend this time together, ladies. Have a wonderful weekend. I'm glad you liked the videos. You're welcome, Cassandra. Yolanda, thank you for coming and spending an hour with me, with us. Bonita, yay, I'm glad you had fun. Awesome. And learned a few things too. I can't wait to see you ladies put some of these techniques into practice. Wilda, thank you for hanging out, spending time with us. We missed you last week, but I know you were busy. And ladies, I know we all live busy lives, so I don't expect you to be here every week, but when you can, please come, have fun, learn a few things. Thank you. You love the glasses. All right. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Bye bye. Have a good week.